You know what I mean? Trenchtown, because you know Trenchtown was a musical place. Trenchtown was like, you know.
Bunny Wailer is a renowned reggae artist who made a significant impact in his time. He was blessed with children and a life partner who stood by him through the good times and the bad. In this video, we'll take a look at this woman's life, her house, and her net worth. Net worth and the house she left behind.
A lot of people might not know that still, but I'm a Kingstonian born, Lining, as is the old.
At the time of his passing in 2021, Bunny Wailer had built a modest but meaningful financial portfolio. He wasn't the richest reggae artist in the world, but he had established himself as a respected senior in the music industry. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was between $1 million and $3 million US. This figure encompasses royalties from decades of recorded music, performances, and merchandise sales. Bunny owned the rights to some of his solo work and had a stake in the Wailers' catalog, particularly the tracks on which he was directly involved. His music continued to earn royalties after his passing, thanks to streams, releases, and growing global interest in classic reggae. There was also income from merchandise, like t-shirts, vinyl records, posters, and other memorabilia tied to his name and image. Also, let's not forget to include some real estate, such as his Kingston property. However, Bunny's wealth cannot always be estimated in numbers. His real treasure was evident in his influence, music, and legacy. Now, let's talk about his house. Bunny Wailer's Kingston home wasn't just a place to live. It was an artistic landmark. The elegant house is tucked away in the quiet, leafy parts of Jamaica's capital, and it holds decades of reggae history, personal memories, and deep spiritual meaning. It was the place where Bunny created music, held spiritual gatherings, and lived with his longtime partner, Jean Watt, known lovingly as Sister Jean. The house itself reflected the Rastafarian way of life, characterized by simplicity, spirituality, and a connection to nature. It wasn't flashy or grand in a celebrity sense. Instead, it was filled with color, roots, reggae vibes, and artifacts that spoke to the journey Bunny and Sister Jean had walked together for over 50 years. On the walls, you would find images of Haile Selassie, hand-drawn posters from past tours, and personal mementos from a life centered on music and faith. This was the home where Jean spent the majority of her life. Despite staying out of the spotlight, she was at the center of the household, managing the domestic rhythm and contributing to Bunny's stage presence through her costume designs. She wasn't the kind of woman who chased attention. Instead, she worked quietly behind the scenes, helping with the day-to-day activities and keeping the space calm and grounded. After her disappearance a few years ago, the house, which was once a place of love and music, suddenly became quieter, filled with worry and sadness. Bunny was described as heartbroken, barely speaking, and deeply affected by her absence. In July 2020, just 2 months after she disappeared, he suffered a stroke. It was his second one in 2 years, and he never fully recovered. Many believe Jean's disappearance accelerated his decline. He passed away less than a year later, on the 2nd of March, 2021. After Bunny's death, the home took on a new kind of silence. The vibrant energy it once had, the music, the laughter, and the spiritual conversations were all gone. For many, the house reminded people of loss. First Jean, then Bunny. 2 lifelong partners have passed away in the same space in less than a year. Yet that home also holds history. It's where Bunny wrote some of his later work. It was where Jean worked on costumes for his tours. It was where they prayed, cooked, and shared daily life. The family has never referred to the house as abandoned because it still belongs to them, and it still holds their memories. But the absence of both Bunny and Jean makes it feel different now. Many agreed it's quieter, while others said it's heavier. After the death of Bunny Wailer, some children started showing up to partake in his will, but families told them to get a paternity test if they were to be considered in any way. Who is Jean Watt? To her loved ones and community, Jean Watt is known as Sister Jean. She was born and raised in Jamaica. She spent most of her life in Kingston, the heart of Jamaican culture and music. Though she stayed largely out of the public eye, her name commands deep respect among those who knew the life she built, alongside reggae legend Bunny Wailer. Sister Jean wasn't just the wife of a famous musician, she was a creative force in her own right. One of her most notable contributions to Bunny Wailer's career was behind the scenes, where she designed and created many of the costumes he wore during his stage performances and tours. The bold, beautiful colors, the shiny fabrics, and the regal Rastafarian flair weren't just fashion choices. They were carefully thought out by Jean, who understood the importance of visual identity in music and culture. Her hands helped design the image fans came to know and love, even if they never knew her name. Jean and Bunny's relationship stretched over 55 years. Yes, it is longer than most marriages in the public eye. Their connection went beyond romance. It was spiritual, grounded in their shared belief in Rastafarianism. Bunny Wailer, born Neville Livingston, was not only a musical pioneer, but also a profoundly spiritual man. And Jean was right beside him on that journey. She wasn't someone who chased fame or attention. Instead, she chose to live a quiet, supportive life, deeply involved in her husband's world, yet always in the background. Those who knew her described Jean as humble and soft-spoken. She didn't seek the spotlight, nor did she grant interviews or make appearances. Even as Bunny Wailer's fame grew after the success of the Wailers, which he co-founded with Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, Jean chose to be a silent partner, rarely seen, but always present. She was more focused on being a grounding presence at home and keeping her husband spiritually aligned during the highs and lows of fame. Their home in Kingston was far more than an abode. It was a space filled with history. It was where they shared decades, created memories, and built a life rooted in love, culture, and music. It was also the last place Jean was seen before her sudden disappearance some 5 years ago. There is often little said about the wives and partners of legendary artists, especially those who work quietly in the background. But Sister Jean's story deserves to be told. She wasn't a star in the way Bunny Wailer was, but she was a steady force, a creative mind, and a quiet strength. Though the world came to know Bunny through music, those who knew him personally understood that Jean was his core. Her influence was evident in his clothes, his mood, and even his perseverance through difficult times. Her disappearance. On the 23rd of May, 2020, Sister Jean walked out of her Kingston home and vanished. There were no cameras to trace her steps. No neighbors could confirm where she went. And from that moment on, nothing has been the same for her family. That day started like any other. Jean Watt, who was 70 years old at the time, was at home with family and caretakers. She had been living with dementia, which had started to affect her memory and orientation more severely in recent months. The family tried to keep a close eye on her, knowing how disoriented she could become. But somehow, in a brief window of time, she walked out of the house unnoticed. When her absence was discovered, panic set in. The family immediately began searching nearby streets. They checked with the neighbors' local shops and called the police. But there was no sign of her, no leads, no clear direction, just a growing fear that something had gone wrong. Soon after, Bunny Wailer, heartbroken and desperate, made a public appeal. He offered a reward of $1 million Jamaican dollars for any information that could lead to Jean's safe return. It was clear how much this was affecting him. Bunny, who had already suffered a stroke in 2018, was fragile, and this only worsened his condition. In no time, flyers went up across Kingston. Jean's pictures circulated widely on social media. Her disappearance made the news. But still, nothing solid turned up. No confirmed sightings, no useful tips. While the trail went cold, the family refused to give up. Bunny's son, Abijah Livingston, took on the responsibility of leading the public effort. He turned to social media, constantly sharing photos and updates, asking anyone with information to come forward. In 2022, Abijah released a documentary titled Whale and Soul: Searching for Ceased Jean. It was his way of keeping her story alive, hoping it would reach someone or anyone who might have seen something. The film included interviews with family members, friends, and community voices, all echoing the same message. Where is Sister Jean? Abijah and his siblings never stopped searching. They followed every possible lead. Sometimes they received calls from people who claimed to have seen her, often in rural areas or on the outskirts of Kingston. But every time, the sightings led to dead ends. As of now, she is still missing, almost 5 years since that quiet walk away from home. Jean's disappearance didn't just impact her family, it shook Jamaica's wider community. Bunny Wailer was a national treasure, the last living member of the Wailers, and one of the country's most respected cultural idols. When his wife went missing, it felt personal to many Jamaicans. Local news stations covered the story extensively in the first few weeks. There were radio segments, newspaper articles, and even moments of silence at cultural events. Rastafarian communities, in particular, rallied around the family, organizing search efforts and spreading awareness. However, on essential dates, her birthday, the day she went missing, or Bunny's death anniversary, the family reminds everyone that the search isn't over. Each year, they repost her photo with a simple but powerful message: "Please help us find Sis Jean." According to his children, Bunny was distraught and spiritually broken. He couldn't stop worrying about her. He would ask about her constantly, even when his speech became limited. His health steadily declined, and on the 2nd of March, 2021, he passed away at the age of 73. In the minds of many, his death was tied to the heartbreak of losing Jean. They had been together for almost 6 decades. They were not just life partners, they were soulmates. Sister Jean was part of his daily life, his creative world, his grounding force. Her absence left a space he simply couldn't fill. After Bunny's death, some assumed the search would fade away. But that hasn't happened. His children, especially Abijah, have made it clear that they won't stop looking. For them, bringing Jean home is about more than closure. It's about love, dignity, and not letting her story be forgotten. Even though they have hit walls, they keep going. New flyers go up, new appeals are made, and now and then someone says they might have seen her. But so far, no sighting has been confirmed. It's a painful kind of limbo. There are no answers, just questions and memories. But the family continues to hope. The truth is, Jean Watt may not have been a public figure, but she was still important. She gave decades of quiet love and loyalty to one of reggae's greatest heroes. She created his stage looks. She supported him behind the scenes. She led a private life, but her disappearance remains a public mystery, one that deserves attention. The family has asked for one simple thing: keep sharing her photo, keep asking, keep looking, because someone, somewhere, might hold the key to what happened that day in May 2020. The man called Bunny Wailer. Bunny Wailer was born Neville O'Reilly Livingston on the 10th of April, 1947, in Kingston, Jamaica. He was a reggae legend and one of the original members of the Wailers, alongside Bob Marley and Peter Tosh. He grew up in 9 Mile, St. Anne Parish, where he met Marley as a child. The two became close friends, and their bond was strengthened when Bunny's father and Bob's mother eventually became a couple. Music was always a part of Bunny's life. He grew up surrounded by the sounds of ska and rocksteady before reggae truly gained popularity. In the early 1960s, Bunny, Bob, and Peter Tosh formed the Wailers, creating music that would go on to change the world. Bunny's harmonies and songwriting added depth to the group's sound, and he helped pen some of their early classics. Though he stepped away from the group in the early 1970s to focus on his solo career, Bunny didn't fade from the spotlight. He released influential albums like Blackheart Man and Protest, which were deeply spiritual and rooted in Rastafarian beliefs. He was known for staying true to his roots and maintaining a quieter, more traditional lifestyle compared to his bandmates. Bunny Wailer had several children, including Abijah Livingston, a musician who continues his father's legacy. Bunny's contribution to reggae earned him multiple awards worldwide: Age, Health, and Her Life Today. If Jean Watt were found today, she would be 75 years old. But you see, her age would have been more than just a number, because it's not just about age. It's about the years her family lost with her. The birthdays were missed, the moments not shared, and the love that remains, waiting for her to return. Sister Jeanne was born in 1950. She was 70 when she went missing in May 2020. Now, in 2025, her family holds on to the hope that she's still alive, somewhere out there. It's not just wishful thinking. There have been unconfirmed sightings over the years, and until there is proof to the contrary, hope remains alive. If she is still living, she has spent over 4 years away from the people who love her, possibly in confusion, isolation, or even being unknowingly cared for by strangers who don't know her story. The idea is heartbreaking, but not impossible. Before she disappeared, Jean had been diagnosed with dementia. If you're wondering what this is, it's a progressive brain condition that affects memory, reasoning, and even a person's sense of direction or time. Many people with dementia can seem fine one minute and disoriented the next. That's likely what happened the day she left home. One moment of confusion, one unguarded second, and she wandered out without anyone noticing. She didn't take a bag, no phone, she just walked out the front door and kept going. People with dementia often walk long distances without realizing how far they have gone. Some find shelter. Strangers help some. Others become too disoriented to ask for help. Jean could have ended up in a nearby neighborhood, a rural town, or somewhere even further away, especially if she had hitched a ride or been picked up by someone unaware she was missing. It's painful to imagine, but necessary to consider. If she was taken in by someone and never recognized, she might be living under care somewhere right now, her past forgotten even by herself. If she's alive, Jean is likely still battling dementia. She might not remember her name, she might not remember Bunny or her children, but that doesn't mean she doesn't deserve to come home. Her life today, if she is with someone kind, could be quiet. Perhaps she spends her days listening to music, a familiar activity that often remains a comfort for people with memory loss. Perhaps she hums along to Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, or Bunny's deep, soulful voice without fully knowing why the melodies feel so familiar. There's also the harder truth. She might be in distress, alone, or even neglected. That's what keeps the family going. The idea is that she needs help, but can't ask for it. That's why they continue to speak up, because someone, somewhere, might have seen her. Someone might be caring for her, or recognize her face from a flyer or an Instagram post. Jean's case highlights the need for improved safety nets, including community alerts, medical bracelets, photo IDs, accessible shelters, and increased awareness of how dementia affects individuals. These aren't just issues for the Wailer family, but for every family caring for aging loved ones. Even though it's been almost 5 years, the Wailer family hasn't stopped searching, and they don't plan to. Even though their hopes are getting dimmer, they are still asking the public to look out for her. Cars, lifestyle, and shared success. Bunny Wailer and Jean Watt lived a life that was more about meaning than material wealth. Throughout Bunny's long career, they accumulated various possessions, such as vehicles and property. But their focus was never on showing off. They valued simplicity, spirituality, and community above all else, including luxury. While Bunny did own vehicles, including a few reliable SUVs and sedans over the years, there are no reports of flashy sports cars or extravagant fleets. That simply wasn't who they were. His cars were practically used for touring, family errands, or quiet travel between Kingston and the countryside. There's also mention of land and real estate. The house where Jean went missing in Kingston was modest, but comfortable and culturally significant. It wasn't a mansion by celebrity standards, but it held history, music, and decades of family memories. That space wasn't just a home, it was part of Jamaica's living reggae history. Jean and Bunny's lifestyle was ingrained deeply in Rastafarian beliefs. That meant living naturally, simply, and intentionally. No over-the-top fashion, no excessive wealth. They avoided processed foods, lived close to the earth, and followed healthy dietary customs. Jean was known for cooking and caring for the home in a way that kept those values alive on a day-to-day basis. They didn't chase media attention. Instead, they remained connected to the people around them, including family, friends, and the broader reggae community. Their clothing, their choices, and even the energy around them were calm. Bunny often wore custom robes and stage outfits, many of them hand-designed by Jean. But those pieces were expressions of culture, not necessarily a sign of wealth. It's easy to assume that celebrities live large, but Bunny and Jean lived intentionally. Even at the height of Bunny's fame, with the Wailers and later as a solo artist, they stayed true to their principles. Their version of success went beyond fame or fortune. It was about spiritual fulfillment, cultural preservation, and staying connected to their roots. Jean Watt may not have been on stage or in front of cameras, but her presence was everywhere in Bunny's career. She was his steady partner through decades of touring, recording, and performing. She designed many of his outfits, robes, hats, and jackets that became part of his signature look. She understood what it meant to look regal and Rastafarian at the same time, and she helped him bring that energy to his performances without needing the spotlight herself. People close to the family say Jean was deeply involved in the home affairs. While Bunny handled the music and the message, Jean kept the daily life in order, managing meals, supporting the children, and sometimes helping with scheduling and logistics behind the scenes. She was the quiet structure behind a legendary figure. In a time when reggae legends were molding Jamaica's global image, Jean helped Bunny stay focused. Her energy balanced his, her care sustained him, and her contributions, though less visible, were just as essential. During his heyday, Bunny Wailer received international recognition, 3 Grammy Awards, icon status in Jamaica, global tours. But behind it all, Jean was the real creator of the magic. She didn't chase headlines, give interviews, or pose for magazines. Instead, she built a life around her partner's work and her personal values. She provided support in ways only a committed life partner could, offering stability in a world of touring, fanfare, and fame. Even as Bunny rose to international recognition, he didn't leave Jean behind. Their relationship remained strong, and he always credited her influence. When she went missing in 2020, he was devastated. People close to him said he was never the same afterward. His health declined, his spirit dimmed. He had always carried himself with strength, but losing Jean shook that core of his, the reggae legend who was also a farmer. Often, when people think of Bunny Wailer, they picture the reggae legend on stage, draped in Rastafarian colors, singing with deep conviction and undeniable talent. However, away from the bright lights and heavy bass lines, Bunny had a quiet passion: farming. Can you imagine that? Long before going back to the land became trendy, Bunny was already living it. He sang about roots, and guess what? He planted them. Bunny started farming seriously around 1978, shortly after stepping away from the Wailers and launching his solo career. At first, people thought it was just a break from touring, but it was much more than that. It was a return to something deeply spiritual. For him, farming is more than work. It was a way to reconnect with the earth, live righteously, and follow the Rastafarian principle that preached self-reliance. Bunny wasn't trying to be a businessman with a tractor. He was a farmer in the most natural, humble sense. Interestingly, this lifestyle didn't hurt his finances. While farming didn't directly inflate his net worth, like Grammy wins or record sales, it helped him maintain it. He didn't depend on supermarkets or outside sources for food. That's money saved and peace of mind gained. His farm also gave him a sense of independence that matched his music career, where he always did things his way. In all of these, his wife, Jean Watt, affectionately known as Sister Jean, was a huge part of this journey. While she was known for designing his colorful stage outfits and being his steady partner, she also had a hand in farm life. Jean was deeply spiritual too, and like Bunny, she found peace in simplicity. For Bunny, farming wasn't just a hobby, It was a form of resistance. Look at it this way. While others chased material success, he went the opposite way by living off the land, staying grounded, and preserving his health, mind, and spirit. He wanted his life to show his music, which is natural, real, and rooted. Even in his later years, when health issues slowed him down, Bunny did not detach from Mother Earth. The farm remained part of his rhythm, that is, less physical work and more observation and blessing. Children and women. If there is one thing that is common with singers, especially successful ones, it is that they tend to father multiple children through different women. Well, our beloved Bunny Wailer is no exception. Although he spent most of his adult life with one woman, Jean Watt, he had children with several other women. In total, Bunny Wailer fathered at least 13 children. 3 of those children were with Sister Jean, the woman with whom he was most closely associated, both personally and publicly. One of their children, Asadanaki Livingston, followed in his father's footsteps as a roots reggae artist. The other 2 children have largely stayed out of the public eye, and their personal lives have been kept private. The remaining 10 children were born to different women at different times in Bunny's life. Some of these relationships were short-term, while others were ongoing. Despite being a deeply spiritual Rastafarian, Bunny did not live a monogamous lifestyle, and his relationships resulted in children born in various parts of Jamaica. Again, Jean Watt was truly his soulmate who, despite these realities, chose to stay with him. The two had been together since the 1960s, so she knew the kind of man Bunny was through and through. Those close to the family described her as understanding, loyal, and deeply rooted in Rastafarian values, which often emphasize spiritual rather than legal or formal definitions of partnership. She never left him, despite his children with other women, and there's no public record of her contesting or reacting negatively to his lifestyle choices. Their bond remained intact until her disappearance in 2020 due to dementia-related complications. Then things got more interesting, or rather complicated, after Bunny Wailer died in March 2021. A new passage in the family's story opened, and it centered around inheritance and identity. Several people came out, claiming to be his biological children. Some had never been publicly acknowledged by Bunny during his lifetime, and their existence came as a surprise even to members of his known family circle. So, to manage this growing list of claimants, the executors of Bunny Wailer's estate stated that anyone claiming to be a child of the reggae legend would need to take a paternity test to verify their relationship before being considered for any share of his assets. This included rights to music royalties, land holdings, personal belongings, and any other part of the estate. It was a necessary legal move, as the estate could not divide assets based on unconfirmed claims. Some individuals complied with the testing process, while others reportedly resisted or failed to follow up. Currently, only legally verified children are considered in matters relating to the estate. This situation raised a few questions. Some asked why Bunny Wailer had not legally named all his children before his death, or why a formal will wasn't made public with clear beneficiaries. Others believed that Bunny, who valued privacy and spirituality over legal processes, may have trusted that his family would sort things out peacefully. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Jean Watt was already missing during this time, and her absence didn't help matters in any way. If anything, it stalled many things, as many didn't know how to handle such a situation in her absence. What do you think of Sister Jean Watt? Also, what part of Bunny Wailer's life did you find interesting? Let's know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.